Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, we'll be looking at how to create acting poses for a female character. The female character that we'll be using in this video is the one that I created in the previous video about how to design exceptional black female characters. If you haven't seen that video, please check the link in the description. I will be addressing a question that came up in the comment section about how I retain likeness when drawing a character multiple times. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let's dive in. So after scouring through my archives, I found an appropriate reference that I thought would be nice to explore as one of her poses. Again, when it comes to poses, when it comes to acting out poses, we're thinking about the story. The story for this one is that she's a vampire who is scared of blood. She's homophobic. So we are looking at her in, sort of like a majestic vampire pose. Maybe she's landing on top of a building or on top of a platform or something like that. So I was just thinking about how to make this pose be as grand as possible. And this is what I came up with using the reference. Of course, when using the references, you don't want to be a slave to reference. You want to use it, with caution, because sometimes you try stuff out and it doesn't work. At this point, I was looking at her sheen and the sheen was looking like really blank. So I thought I should add some refinements to the sheen. And after trying this one out, I kind of liked it and thought I should also apply that to the original design. As you can see, the shapes in her sheen area are rounded, and these are very intentional because all I was thinking about was the original shape language, which is circle and triangle. Moving on to our second expression, I was thinking about the original story, which is about how she's homophobic. So I was thinking, how do we communicate clearly with a pose that she does not like the taste of blood? So with this idea, I was thinking about a pose that would communicate that, and maybe this is her first time of tasting blood, so we can kind of see the irritation in her face and her body, kind of being repulsed by the whole experience. So that's why she's kind of leaning back, and I struggled with the hands for a bit because I was trying to find the right hand pose. I didn't want to repeat the left and the right hands. I didn't want them to look exactly the same. So I thought about changing that, and that's exactly what I did. At this point also, I remember clearly that I was not feeling the fact that her hands were bare. So I was thinking about how her hands would be like claws. So I was thinking of giving her claws at this point, and it just seemed like a eureka moment, because I was wondering, why on earth did she not have claws in the first place? It just makes sense to have claws. So I worked on that, and then kind of switched the whole colors to black ink and was making corrections here and there. At this point, I went back to the first expression, and worked out her claws to make her hands more consistent. And that was it for the second pose. For her third pose, I was thinking about her scientific, profession, and how she was able to figure out the serum that would replace blood. So maybe she was like really excited when she finally figured out, the secret formula to create her own blood in the lab. And that was the idea for this pose. So I was just thinking about how to find something that is clear. The silhouette is clear and you can read it. Her hands are lifted up as she's holding out the test tube to her face, and she's staring at the liquid inside of the test tube. And she is joyful for what she's seeing because she has finally discovered what she has probably been working for many days or weeks or probably even years. So this is just the idea behind the story. I was looking at the pose and trying to figure it out, flipping it, flipping the horizontal here and there just to be sure that it's working on both sides. But for her second arm, it wasn't quite working. So my reference comes to the rescue. And this is how I was able to figure out how to draw her fist correctly. This happens to me sometimes, while working, you try a few things and maybe your visual library is not wealthy enough to take care of business. So I have to refer to using references. Sometimes I use myself, sometimes I am patient enough to find references from my archives. So yeah, back to where we were. I was, kind of feeling a little bit more confident at this point, and after drawing her goggles, her scientific goggles, I started to polish the line work. Some things weren't really working, and I just went back and forth trying to make them look better. At this point, observation is really, really key because you have to be your best critic. You need to be able to look at the work and be able to say, yes, this is done, let's move on. At this point, I wasn't really feeling some things, so I was just making like final edits and corrections. I went back to some of the other drawings and added some, final details to it as well. At this point, I'm just focusing on the line work of the entire three poses and making sure that I am happy with where they are before applying colors. So I thought about this idea of her saying blood sucks. I mean, do I say all puns intended? Blood sucks, she sucks blood. You get the idea. So on the issue of likeness, we have these two shapes, which is a sphere and a pyramid. Remember, we're dealing with two shapes, a circle and a triangle. So but now we've decided to make this shape solid, so this is a sphere and a pyramid, right? So the idea is to kind of rotate this pyramid, to rotate the pyramid slightly backwards, and then add that to the sphere to create this complex shape. Now this complex shape is what we will be using to rotate the heads at different angles, to be able to draw the heads at different angles, and this would help with lightness. To do that, I have taken the liberty to create like this shape in 3D form. I'm using Clip Studio Paint. I believe you can do this with any software. If you're using Blender, you should be able to do that with Blender as well. So this is like a three-dimensional shape, and then I've rotated them at different angles so that I can be able to like draw the heads on top of that. So this is the shape. This is the shape that we get out of these different angle rotations. And then I did like draw overs of the head at these different angles, and you can see that I kind of followed the solid shapes underneath. So this is how I go about drawing heads at different angles. I usually do not use this exact method because I kind of have like muscle memory where I just go, dive right in and do the drawings by heart. But to be able to explain these things clearly so that you can understand, this is kind of how I go about it. We have to pay attention to the various components of the face as well, like the eyes. So if you look at the subject on the left, we can see that the eyes are somewhat far apart. So we have to pay attention to that when doing these drawings. All the drawings, we have to pay attention to keeping the eyes far apart. And then also we have to look at the gaps between the eyes and the nose and the lips. So these gaps are really important, and we pay attention to them when designing as well. Also paying attention to the shape of the jaw, the jawline. This requires a lot of observation while drawing, and that's the intuitive part of it. Back to the work. The line work was good enough for me, so I moved on to applying colors. And again, I use like this method of just creating an overall silhouette and then breaking them down into different colored shapes so that I have control, and I'm still keeping the same original color scheme, which is analogous. Her trench coat is red, her suit is tending towards purple. The same thing applies to the scientific pose as well. I only added reflection to her goggle. I also made sure that the color of the serum is not red like blood. Finally, I added rim lights to all the poses. For the vampire pose, I was thinking about the light coming from the bottom right. For the other ones, the lights are coming from the top. And finally, I added some reflections to her test tube just to make it look more like glass. And that was where I wrapped it up. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification bell. And I'll see you on the next one.